For the government, it's an historic moment that marks the end of the free movement of people. From January the 1st, 2021, a new immigration system based on qualifications and earnings will operate in the UK. Under the plans, workers who don't have the equivalent of A-levels or Scottish Highers will no longer get visas. A salary threshold for workers wanting to come to the UK would be set at £25,600. But professions facing a shortage of workers, such as nursing, will be allowed in on a lower figure of just over 20,000. And a scheme to bring in seasonal agriculture workers will be expanded. The Home Secretary says the changes will boost the economy and attract the brightest and best. Our political editor, Gary Gibbon, reports.
Is it not time we took back control of our immigration policy?
We add a population the size of Newcastle every year.
Concern about immigration helped to deliver a victory to the Leave campaign. Now Britain's out, the government wants voters to feel their message in the referendum is being acted on.
Yes, we will bring overall numbers down by reducing the number of people with low skills coming to the United Kingdom.
This is the detailed.
So skilled workers above a pay floor can come to the country if they've got a promise of a job. But those classified as unskilled can't.
Put up your hands if you voted for Brexit, you voted to leave.
A cafe in Stratford-upon-Avon this morning. Do they like the sound of what the government is announcing?
I think we've got to try it, and then if it doesn't work, maybe let some people in, but we should be more like Australia, where you have to speak English and have a job, and you can't get benefits. You can't get benefits.
We have people in our own country who need jobs, and there are jobs there for them, and they should use our people.
Serving them, young Bulgarians who aren't convinced the local workforce will step in to serve.
I don't think the English people, they would like to work this job. Well, we are working in a Greek restaurant, and most of us, actually all of us, we are foreigner, and there is no British people who wants to work this.
Are you taking British people's jobs?
I wouldn't say so, no. I don't think so. There are lots of jobs.
The hospitality industry was joined by other sectors, including social care and construction, pleading with the government to relax its planned rules, or at least give them more time to adapt beyond the end of the year deadline.
Thank you.
If you take the care sector, for example, there are 100,000 vacancies right now as we speak. So how the care sector is going to be able to recruit the people that they need as quickly as is going to be required is going to be challenging. We want to be able to build bridges and roads and railways, and there's an infrastructure revolution that we need. We have an ageing population who need care workers. Well, I think that is the conversation that we need to have with government. It's the conversation that we need to have.
This looks exciting.
The Home Secretary suggested that conversation wasn't necessary if those employers recruit from the millions of Britons not in work and not seeking work.
There are 8.45 million British people in the United Kingdom that are economically inactive across the country in different parts of the country.
So the message is get on your bike, is it?
Well, the message is we will be working with businesses and employers to invest in people and in skills.
But the government's own numbers suggest of those 8.5 million, a big chunk are students. Many others are sick, many also looking after their families. Others are retired, making the pool of what the government statisticians call discouraged workers actually 33,000. By the Thames, these were once the offices of the Leave campaign, where some would say this all started. You were working in that building over there, the Vote Leave headquarters. This is the culmination of something that started there in the build-up to the referendum, a card played in the referendum, and immigration is now neutralised as an issue, you think?
To a large degree, I think yes, but we saw that people aren't focused solely on numbers. You know, the old hundreds of thousands figure that we saw trotted out in a time when we actually couldn't even control that. The focus was more on control, and today's announcement by the government delivers exactly that.
This is not the end of the debate over immigration. Ultimately, it was about numbers more than anything else. And I'm just not sure that a year down the line, 2 years down the line, that anything with that is actually going to change.
Some industries still hope the government could show flexibility and loosen immigration controls over time. The government insists there's no need to do that. Employers must recruit and train better and pay more.
Well, joining me now from Westminster, the Conservative MP John Redwood, and in the studio we have the economist Faiza Shaheen, who stood for Labour but lost in the last election and is director of the left-wing think tank Class. Faiza Shaheen, this is what people voted for.
Well, it is certainly a policy that isn't driven by evidence or economic need or society or a history of emigration as well as immigration. So you have to wonder where it comes from. And I think it is driven by xenophobia. And we see it in the context of a government that has come in, that has voted against child refugees being able to be united with their families. You know, we've seen this week that they hired someone that was into eugenics. You know, they keep sending out this message of xenophobia, and when you look at the facts alongside what they're doing, it just doesn't go together. You know, if you think about what this is meant to solve, it doesn't solve low wages.
But what's wrong with putting those 8.5 million people who are currently being old, being sick, looking after members of their family to work?
I mean, because they're doing other things, right? They're sick. They're caring for people. And, you know, it's a nonsense number, really, when you look at it. And, you know, again, if you want to do something about wages, if you want to do something about jobs, you don't focus on immigration. You have to deal with the issues in the labour market that are more about trade unions and the impact of the crash and austerity.
So, John, why do you think these 8.5 million people who Priti Patel talked about today are suddenly going to start applying for jobs that they don't currently apply for?
What I welcome about today is the vision of a better paid, more productive workforce. And it's mainly about getting people better paid because they're more skilled and they're supported by better investment in the care home or in the office or in the factory or wherever it is.
Well, so you think care workers will be paid more?
Isn't that a great... Yes, of course I want care workers to be paid more. And it has to be paid for out of productivity gains, higher quality work, more training, more support for them, and above all, more investment in equipment and computers and so forth that can assist them in their tasks. We've got a great modern vision for a better society in which people have better, more rewarding jobs that are better paid, and we're trying to lead the employers with us. We don't like this model where they don't mechanise, they don't put the support behind their workers, they don't invest in the workforce,
can you mechanise
which the
looking
bad
after the
employers
elderly?
fail to do.
I mean, a lot of it's to do with cleaning them, isn't it? And doing simple tasks like that can't be done by a robot.
Well, the basic care is a very skilled job and it needs to be properly rewarded. But there are all sorts of aids to cleaning and transporting and handling and so forth where you do need decent equipment, and you certainly need very good information systems to know what the needs of an individual is, and that can make the care worker more effective and provide a better quality of care. Because it's not just about cost, it's about quality above all else. And the best businesses invest in both their people and in their technology, because what it should be driven by is a passion to have higher quality care in the care home or higher quality service in the office or whatever it is.
We've had the Conservatives in government for 10 years, and it's been in their gift to pay higher wages for care workers. It's been in their gift to invest in nurses' bursaries, for instance. Let's talk about my old teacher that I saw that hasn't had an inflation beating pay rise for 10 years. That's not because of immigration, that's because of a public sector pay cap. So, you know, this is a distraction, and how perfect for the Etonians that have undermined wages in this country, undermined workers' rights in this country, to make us focus on the Romanians rather than what they're up to. And it's frustrating to see this policy also because we are limiting ourselves. What we are doing is also saying that we can't move abroad. All of my friends, all of the people that have moved to Spain, learned Spanish, lived there, you know, you don't think Spain is going to turn around? That's an argument you lost at the election,
isn't it, the point? So we have to concentrate on this new system. I mean, so John, you know, people might sort of wonder whether the actual immigration numbers are going to come down as a result of this system. Why are you so sure that they will?
Well, you haven't asked me that yet. I mean, the Home Secretary said she anticipates a reduction in numbers. Well, not everybody does, but there are certainly very great pressures on housing and public services, particularly in certain areas, and we do have to have a pace of change which is acceptable to the people who already live here. And we want to use the talents of the people who already live here to the full and get them into more of those better paid jobs. But the Home Secretary and the government has it within their power to control the numbers rather better than we were able to when we had the unfair asymmetric system where we had to accept anybody from the European Union, but we had to be tougher on non-Europe. I rather welcome the fact that we're going to be fair to the whole world. I don't think people from Jamaica should be behind in the queue people from the continent of Europe, for example. So this would be a fair system for the whole world.
So this will lead to more Asians and Africans coming to Britain, will it?
And the government will decide, along with Parliament, how many is appropriate. And they will be able to flex this system because they can decide to make it more difficult to get in, or they can decide to make it easier to get in, depending on how many people we think we would like and depending on what the needs of the economy are. Isn't it so much better to have it under our control so we can have a proper debate and then come to sensible decisions? And
so do you think,
if they get it slightly wrong the first time, they'll revise
sorry
it.
to butt in, it's just we're short of time. I mean, do you think, I mean, you seem to be saying that there will be a rebalancing so that we will get more people from Asia and Africa and fewer people from Europe. Are you sure that's what people wanted?
No, the rebalancing will be that we have fewer people from Europe because quite a lot of people came in from Europe for those very low-paid jobs or came in with no job. And one other big feature of this new scheme, which I think many people will welcome, is that when you come, you have to stay here for a bit and work here for a bit before you gain entitlement to all those benefits which were automatically provided to EU citizens under the old arrangements. We couldn't even control our own benefit system.
OK. Faiza, Shaheen, don't you have to accept that this is political and this is what people wanted? And if that's what they want and that they accept that there's an economic cost in terms of tax receipts or whatever, but they want it for cultural reasons, you've just got to accept that.
Well, you can just accept that, or you can say we should actually be trying to change people's minds on this, because you're right that people say that some people, not everyone, some people say that I'm even willing to lose money to have less immigration. Now, we have to get to the heart of that, because ultimately what that is saying, what that points to are feelings of xenophobia. That's not saying it's because of the economy. That's saying because I just feel uncomfortable with people coming here. Now, if we invested more in our community...
You don't have to be xenophobic, do you, to want to maintain your culture?
I mean, you know, it's interesting that we have this idea of British culture that doesn't recognise centuries of people going abroad as well, right? We've always had a multi-ethnic working class, for instance, and we are just not having that conversation. And that's actually the fault of the progressives and the left as well for not making that argument. Okay. But this policy will fail, just like the caps failed, just like the targets failed before.
We're going to have more on this later on in the programme. Faiza, Shaheen and Sir John Roper, thank you very much indeed.
The government's announcement of a radical overhaul of the immigration system. How many people are allowed to come and work in this country isn't just a question about our economy. For some, the issue is about our national identity. Over the decades, prime ministers have tried to get to grips with this highly emotive subject.
Since Caribbean families started coming to the UK in the 1950s, our politicians have danced around the issue of immigration. Should they talk about it or shouldn't they? And if they do, is that inevitably racist? In the run-up to her first election victory in 1979, Margaret Thatcher presented a stark assessment of the dangers of immigration.
People are really rather afraid that this country might be rather swamped by people with a different culture.
As Britain became a more multicultural society, that sort of language became unacceptable. But did the ideas behind it? In the 2005 election, the Conservatives tapped into concerns over immigration, saying it wasn't racist to talk about controls. Their question to voters, are you thinking what we're thinking? The answer was, apparently, no. Tony Blair was returned for a third time. But when Gordon Brown took over as Prime Minister, his vision for Britain included this.
Drawing on the talents of all to create British jobs for British workers.
A message perhaps to these workers in Labour's heartlands, protesting against the use of migrant labour from Europe. Experts had forecast that perhaps 13,000 workers would come to the UK after 8 Eastern European countries joined the EU. Instead, hundreds of thousands arrived. By 2010, the Conservatives had decided it was time to make a dramatic promise.
I would like to see net immigration in the tens of thousands, not in the hundreds of thousands. So a very significant cut.
But it wasn't cut. In fact, it went up to more than 300,000 at one point. Shortly after she became Prime Minister, Theresa May summed up the tortured nature of this debate with a now notorious phrase.
But if you believe you're a citizen of the world, you're a citizen of nowhere.
The often vitriolic referendum campaign forced arguments about immigration and race centre stage. Nigel Farage believes that this notorious breaking point poster won the vote for Leave. His critics said it showed dishonesty and intolerance. Its ultimate legacy, perhaps, to bond the idea of immigration controls and racism more firmly together.
It is racist, whether or not it feels racist. The truth is, our Prime Minister's a real racist.
The rapper Dave, a winner at last night's Brit Awards, is in no doubt where the current Prime Minister stands. That claim has been firmly rejected by Mr Johnson's allies.
Well, I think his comments are wholly inaccurate, wholly inappropriate. I've known the Prime Minister for a significant period of time, even before I became Home Secretary. He is absolutely not a racist.
Well, joining me now is Nels Abbey, who is author of Think Like a White Man, a satire on being black in the corporate world, and Cindy Yu, who is broadcast editor of The Spectator. Thanks to both of you for coming in. Nels, let me start with you. Do you think that what the government announced today will turn the clock back?
It's a good question. I do not. I don't think so. I think that we'll still be reliant on labour from outside labour from far and wide across the entire world. Let me just give you an example of where we are as a nation right now. 2014, I was lucky enough to have my first child and my only child as my daughter. And the two things that went through my mind when I was actually in the actual delivery room was, number one, I am so happy that I'm not on the side of the deal where my wife is right now. And number two, it was almost like watching a Formula One pit stop of almost people from different parts of the world around my wife, putting the epidural in her, helping her out to help her deliver my daughter. And my daughter was delivered by so many different people from so many parts of the world.
From all over the world.
From all over the world. And I thought that many people within our society often don't realise the actual contribution that people from around the world are actually contributing to this are giving to this nation and making it what it is today, and making it a greater place.
So is the problem that we've become a nation of immigrants by default but not by design? That these kind of numbers have crept up on people but never fully explained?
I don't accept that we were never anything but a nation of immigrants. I think that we've always had immigration coming and going. I think we've also been a nation that's always been going way beyond our boundaries too, way beyond our borders. I'm from a place called, I'm originally from a place called Nigeria and Ghana. Those two places were places that were created by Britain. Nigeria, for example, is just a group of places that were amalgamated by Britain for the very purpose of Britain's commercial interest. And as a result of that, people like myself are here today.
Cynthia, should we celebrate the fact that this country is now such an amalgam of so many different people? Like all of us. I mean, I was born in Germany, you were born in China, you were born to Nigerian parents. So
yeah, absolutely.
We are modern Britain. Here we are, a troika of modern Britain.
Yes, absolutely. And I think we often forget how diverse we are and how exceptionally diverse we are when it comes to the global stage. You know, as you say, I was born in China. In China, 99% of people look like me. They are Han Chinese, right? So there's no diversity there, and there's no chat of racism because there's no minority. There's no vocal minority to say, at least to say, you know, you are being racist. And of course, in recent years, that's changed a little bit now. But in this country, racism is such a topic because we have such a vocal minority, we have such a vibrant minority community that we can say, actually, this isn't good enough.
But the problem is the language, isn't it? I mean, when Theresa May says, if you're a citizen of the world, you're a citizen of nowhere, that is a deeply charged phrase to many people and deeply offensive, frankly.
I don't agree with her on that. I'm very cosmopolitan in my outlook I would say that I'm very liberal on this perspective. I would love to go traveling around the world. I would love to live in different places. But what she's tapping into is a very conservative, small c conservative way of looking at life, which is not necessarily offensive, it's just community-based. You know, community is based on people you know, people you share history with, a religion with, a language with, and that's understandable, I think.
But you know, we're talking about numbers here, and we're talking about economics, but you know, depending on who comes in or who doesn't come in the next few years, this will fundamentally change the tone and the nature of our country, won't it?
It could potentially do so, but the reality of the matter is that we are moving into the unknown. The reality is that we just actually don't know.
In a good way or a bad way?
In both ways, really and truly. It feels like much of Brexit and everything else has actually been one of the biggest gambles known to mankind in terms of the economy the size of ours, for example, and the actual, because I think that our culture as a society, and what we are right now, and the direction we've been moving in over the last 20, 30 years, I was born in the 80s, I know how boring the 80s were compared to, say, where we are right now. And I think Britain has become a lot more exciting, a lot more fun, diverse and beautiful place. And I think that's something we should be happy, we should celebrate. But I can understand, to a certain degree, why there is some apprehensions about it. I can understand where it's coming from, and I think it's actually coming not from, I don't think it's legitimate, I can understand it, and I think it's coming from actually politicians who are often shifting the blame for things shifting the blame onto immigrants for things that they're to blame for.
And will that get worse or will it get better, do you think?
It will persistently get worse as things go wrong, as things go, look, we boom and bust economies, as things go wrong, the scapegoat has always been the minority, has always been the immigrant, has always been the person, has always been the cheapest person to scapegoat when things go wrong.
Cynthia, should there have been something today in the government's new policy that says, you know, we're going to change the numbers and we're going to change the criteria, but we welcome all of you who've come here? I mean, I didn't hear the love in that message, frankly, and there are a lot of people here who have come from outside, 14.5% of the population.
You know, I actually disagree with that because I think, what is a global Britain visa, right? That is a welcoming message. So, I mean, that is one of the things.
Shouldn't it be spelt out, though?
Well, it is. I mean, it is spelled out. The points-based system today has already been spelled out quite a lot. And if you look at it for non-EU migrants, so non-EU nationals, it's actually become more liberal, not less liberal.
That's a theory.
What was the salary threshold has been moved from 30,000 down to 25,000. What counts as skilled labour has moved down from degree level to A level. So, that is a liberalisation of our immigration system for non-EU nationals.
The salary threshold, as it would happen, when we're thinking of England, we think of the people, things that are great about Britain, for example, William Shakespeare, in today's day and age, wouldn't have made it to the salary threshold. The average writer earns about £11,000 a year in this society. And trust me, that takes a high level of skill and actually.
No, absolutely. And that's why the government has exemptions for people in the arts world, for people in the music world who are not in that threshold just yet. And that is spelled out today as well.
But don't you want young people to come here and stay here? Young people who don't earn that kind of money, because they then, they will buy into, the British dream, if there is such a thing, and stay and become stakeholders in the society.
Yes, absolutely. And that's why, the degree level is there, the A-level skills definition is there. But also, that salary threshold is lowered for scientists, for other high-skilled migrants, from 25,000 to something closer to 20,000.
Quickly.
Yeah, I just think that, again, the way in which we're defining skills, or skilled within this actual debate also, is flagrantly offensive.
Sure.
And also, too, what's often dismissed as unskilled labour are actually critical to our economy and our society. They help make it what it is today.
We've run out, sadly. Nels, Cindy, thanks very much indeed.